it was Christ who spoke the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, nevertheless, this is a subordinate Christ, and he does not accept the Trinity. So when did the Trinity actually come to Seventh-day Baptists? Well, this is an effect of basically two things. In the 1700s, you have the Methodist awakening that gave hymns to the world, split many, many Baptist churches over the issue of hymn singing. Most churches didn't accept hymn singing at all. And when the Seventh-day Baptist two hymnals came out in the 1690s, and these were precursors of this Methodist movement. The Stennetts brought out hymnals for the particular Baptists, one for communion and the other for baptism. They felt that the Psalms didn't provide enough material, or Christian enough material, for these events. And this attitude let in hymn singing, and with the Methodists then Trinitarianism. That's one point. And the other point is that at the end of the century, the 1700s, you had this conflict that reached Baptists too. The conflict over the Trinity and the unity of God, which resulted in the establishment of the Unitarian churches. So many Baptist churches became Unitarian, which means that the strong Unitarian strand of the Baptist churches just disappeared from the Baptist scene and became the Unitarian churches. So this helped to bring the Trinity into Seventh-day Baptists. The Trinity apparently was not accepted by any Seventh-day Baptists that we know of before this time. If we look at the great Sabbatarian writers of the 1700s, we find some of the greatest exponents of Unitarian faith. Edward Elwall, for example, writing in the 1700s, a member of the Maillard Church, wrote several pamphlets, one or two of which very strenuously argued for the unity of God. Edward Elwall was perhaps an eccentric figure. He wore a long white robe and a purple turban. He was a silk merchant, going to Turkey often. He became a dervish there, a Sabbatarian dervish, and he was the last man to be tried for blasphemy in England because of his propagation of the unity of God against the doctrine of the Trinity. He was acquitted, but he was the last person to be tried under that law. So there you have the early history of the Seventh-day Baptists being very strongly Unitarian, believing in the millennial kingdom of God, kingdom of the Messiah on earth, Sabbatarian. The Maillard people also kept and still do today, kept the Old Testament food laws, as well as having the doctrine of universal grace. All of these hallmarks of the true faith down through the ages. And this all came most likely from the old Celtic churches, the same as my name, McIlwain. So there's one strand. The other strand, which we mentioned with Edward Elwall already, is a strand that has come out of Anatolia in Turkey and goes back many, many centuries, probably to as far back as the Paulicians, who took haven among the Muslims in the 10th century, 9th century AD, and provided an immense movement that was joined to the dervishes in the 13th century, and spread throughout the Islamic world into Andalusia as a sort of crypto-Muslim sect, if you like, the order of dervishes, among the Bektashis certainly, but among others as well. Edward Elwal was apparently a Bektashi, but these Sabbatarian people from before the rise of Islam took refuge with the Islamic states and thus continued to transmit the faith in one God, in Christ's role as Messiah, in the food laws, in universal grace, all of these typical doctrines of the true faith down through the ages, including the annual feasts. These people tended to scatter into the mountain areas. If you look in Turkey, you find them, the stronghold of the Paulicians was in the Taurus Mountains, and you find people of the Bektashi and Alevi faith in that area very strongly today. You find Sabbatarian, Unitarian descendants of the Paulicians under the very name Paulician in the Caucasus, Russian Caucasus, again a mountain area. The Paulicians were in Thrace, and from there they spread out through the Balkans and went as far as the Waldensians, and you have a whole band of Sabbatarians across Europe from the Paulician influence. You have pockets of them in Bosnia today, in Transylvania, in the mountain areas. These people hiding out among the Islamic dervish orders finally were thrust out of Spain in 1492, and some of them became refugees. It is said that the Melungeon people in the southern part of Appalachia are descendants of Native Americans, the Moorish refugees, and white people. So it's a tri-racial community. One of the most common names among the Melungeons is Mullins, descended from the Pilgrim Fathers. John Mullins, on the list of passengers on the Mayflower, in this group of Sabbatarians that had come from Holland, not from England actually, well, from England to Holland, and from Holland to what is now America. And we find John Mullins among them, the forefather of the Melungeons, meeting Sabbatarians from Spain in the southern Appalachian area. And there they joined together in the faith that is essentially the same through all of these ages. One coming from the British or Celtic line, and the other coming from the Turkish, Arab, Moorish line from the Middle East, and joining there in the southern Appalachian Mountains, and still keeping the Sabbath, still believing in one God, still believing in the kingdom of the Messiah on earth, in Jesus Christ, still following the food laws, still following annual feasts of the Bible, and still believing in universal grace, and preaching these things where possible, and living them in isolation in the mountain areas where persecution had always forced them to go. And as I was growing up, I heard many, many stories about these Sabbatarians,